Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2011. We're going to be taking a look at Stevie Wonder and Sting performing Fragile, and this was part of Sting's 60th birthday celebrations, and Stevie is taking over on vocal duty here and also on the harmonica. And I'm going to let this play the whole way through. It's 3 minutes and 58 seconds. It's one of those performances that you don't want to interrupt, and to appreciate it, you've really got to hear it from beginning to end to get an appreciation of the musicality and the flow and all the amazing things going on here. If I was to be jumping in to this performance and analysing it, obviously it would break the mood, but I'd probably be here for the next 500 years trying to just point out all the things that are great about this performance. But let's get them up on screen and see how they get on.
I love this song. Blood will flow, and flesh is still on, drying in the color of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stain away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to cleanse a lifetime's argument, and nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on, the rain will fall like tears from the star, like tears from the star. On and on, the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. Tears from the star, like tears from a star. On and on, the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. On and on, the rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. Stevie Wonder.
And there we have it. I think Sting really sums up the whole performance just by throwing his arms out at the end, because sometimes something happens musically that is art and you don't really analyze it because it's just so good. And a performance like that from Stevie Wonder, and the whole band and the orchestra, the arrangement, everything just dovetails perfectly. And when you've got somebody of Sting's ability, and as a singer, as a musician, as a composer, just as an all-round artist, just throwing his arms up, you know the level that Stevie Wonder must be at. The appreciation of melody that Stevie Wonder has in all of his music, in his singing, his piano playing, his harmonica playing, just as an instrumentalist, he keeps you interested the whole time because he's making a journey out of that particular solo that might only last for 20 seconds, but just in itself, it's so interesting. And he goes to so many different places that you always want to hear where he's going next, and he will always resolve it at the end. Another thing right at the end where we have the band now starting to tie up and we're slowing down the tempo. We're really leaving the track in a place that is making you think because it is so dramatic towards the end. And then Stevie hasn't finished yet on the harmonica. He just brings it in and plays such a perfect line. And I don't know whether that was rehearsed. It seems like maybe it wasn't, because Sting walked over to Stevie and put his arm around him as if this is the end of the song. But then once Stevie started to add in with that harmonica, you could see that Sting is just saying to the band, roll it round again, because you have that perfect ending that Stevie, right at the end, you think he's resolved, and then he just ends on that fifth. And it is such a cool place to end that only Stevie Wonder would do that. And it's just his own unique way of playing. And like I said, his appreciation of melody, he will take it somewhere that you're not expecting, but that place is always amazing. As I mentioned, it's one of those performances that you can just sit through and want to watch it again. The link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can watch it as many times as you want to. There will always be something new that you can appreciate from this performance, and analyzing it is difficult when it's just all round so good. You just want to sit back and say, right, well, that's amazing. On to the next video. But because I have been asked to analyze this as best I can, we're going to dive into it and see the elements that make it so good and why this kind of thing is so rare to see. Anyone that has picked up the classical guitar and played this song will know exactly how nice it is to play just because of the progression, but it's such a well-composed piece for the guitar. And it's so emotive. Some of the chords that are thrown together, some of the voicings, I can talk about the dynamics and the ebb and flow to the performance. And again, that's going to go on all year. When Stevie comes in vocally, this track sounds like it could have been a Stevie Wonder track because of the way that Stevie delivers it, but also the way that he makes it his own by choosing different melodic options with the vocal melody. Everyone will know Sting's original vocal, but Stevie throws in some lines here that are totally different to the lines that Sting sang on the original, but they work just like it's his own song, even though it's totally different. And with a lot of artists, when they try and change an original track that was already amazing, they crash and burn because you can't beat the original melody, the strength of that, and everybody is used to that melody. So trying to come up with something new that's going to try and compete with that original is impossible, usually, to do. But because of Stevie Wonder's appreciation of melody, he just knows where to go. He knows exactly what emotions he wants to elicit in the audience with his vocal cords. And what a set of vocal cords Stevie Wonder has. The flexibility that he has in those chords is second to none in terms of the trills that he throws together and the accuracy of those trills. And it's funny that recently I've done a video this week on auto-tune in the music industry, and then you look at this video and Stevie Wonder is the perfect antidote to auto-tune and the current music industry, because just listen to this and look at it as a piece of art, but also to singers who are trying to express with their vocals. This is how you do it. There is such a wealth of talent here, and the reason these performances are so rare is because we've got so many things here that have clicked in. Like I said before, they've dovetailed. You've got the composition, which is such a great journey in itself, instrumentally, just on the classical guitar. Bring in the arrangement of the orchestra, of the strings. Bring in Stevie Wonder's talent as a vocalist, the way that he can emote with his voice, and then his talent as an instrumentalist, taking over the solo sections on the harmonica. There are so many things that are just A+ across the whole band and all of the musicians. When everything clicks like that, that is when you get art that just stands alone. And imagine if we didn't have the internet, imagine if we didn't have cameras that captured this performance, and you heard somebody say, oh, I went and saw Sting and Stevie Wonder sang Fragile and it was great, and you say, oh wow, that's great, but you'd never get to appreciate it like we can now. We can literally be there and appreciate this performance, which is amazing. Again, I could talk about Stevie's voice all year, but a couple of other things about his vocal cords, but also his resonance chamber, that is his head, because the tone that Stevie Wonder gets with his vocal is so unique because he's just using it how it was designed to be used. He's not trying to sing like anybody else. But then his vibrato, he has such a control on that frequency of vibrato, but also how wide that vibrato is, how even it is, and how expressive it is. And having those elements that all come together that are so under control, that's how he can connect. It is like he is telling his own story, even with somebody else's song. It's such a difficult balancing act for a musician to write music that's going to appeal to a lot of people and not be too theoretical, not be too progressive, especially with someone like Sting and his compositional technique, his skill just as an instrumentalist, but also a vocalist, putting something together with his musical theory that is going to connect with a lot of people is so difficult, because having that mainstream appreciation of melody is something that sometimes musicians and composers can go too far with the theory, and it won't connect to the mainstream audience because they don't get it. They don't understand the theory behind what they're listening to. Sometimes it's great to have an album that is made purely for musicians so that they can get a kick out of the progressions and the interesting things that are going on musically. There's certainly a place for that. But Sting had that ability to turn all of that knowledge into a melody that would connect with a lot of people, but also pair that together with songwriting and lyrical content and making a point about a song, having a message that you want to send through to an audience. And this is a great example of a song that has a definite message within it. And even if you don't understand the message or you don't know what the song's about, by the end of this performance, you know that something's happened. Something more than music has just happened. A point has been made, even though you don't fully understand what it is yet. And that's the great thing about this level of musicianship and artistry. Another thing about this performance is that when I'm talking about other parts of the performance, something will pop into my head that just stood out. And the thing that did pop in there was when Stevie Wonder took his vocal up an octave at the end of the performance. It is such a dramatic thing to do, musically, dynamically, and emotionally. It just puts the end of the track in a totally different place to the rest of the track. But he could have kept singing in that lower register. It wouldn't have mattered. It still would have been an amazing performance. But guys like Stevie Wonder, when they perform, just when you think it is an amazing performance and it's great and it couldn't get any better, they do something to somehow make it even more impressive, even more emotional, even more dynamic, and that's exactly what Stevie Wonder does at the end. A lot of singers will try and get up there to that upper chest register, but it's out of control because it sounds like a shout. And that is the difference between the great singers and the ones that are trying to be great singers but not quite cutting it. It's the control of the upper register to keep the connection they had that octave below but now an octave higher, and that's exactly what Stevie Wonder has, and by the way, it's what Sting has. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to analyze Sting and his vocals in this particular video because he is in that same bracket. And it's funny that when you're looking at two top vocalists, you can see the similarities between the two. I've already mentioned about Stevie Wonder having a unique tone to his voice because of his resonance chamber, the head that he has. Exactly the same with Sting. Such a unique tone to his voice. But then Sting also has the ability to sing in that lower register, but then also belt in chest voice. If he wants to take it up an octave, he can do that, and it's something that Stevie Wonder can do. And the important thing is, Sting also has the ability to have the same control in that top register, belting out in chest, that he does in the lower register. It's one of those things that when top vocalists get up into that top part of their register, their voice doesn't sound any worse, it just gets better. The differences that we do have vocally between Sting and Stevie is that Stevie has that flexibility to his vocal cords where he can throw together such complex trills. Sting is very much a straighter singer in terms of holding on one note for a longer period of time and isn't going to be going through as many trills. And Stevie Wonder is the king of these trills. There are other singers that do try to sing a lot of notes in a second and overdo it, but Stevie Wonder is the classic example of doing it artistically and above all else musically. Another thing about this song is the writing by Sting, the lyrical content in there, but also the political nature of those lyrics and the reason that Sting wrote it in the first place. And I'm going to try and cover that with you quickly. I don't want this to turn into a history lesson, but I just want to give you an appreciation of what the song's about, just in case you don't know. So Ben Linder was an American engineer, and he was over in Nicaragua, and he was working with a town, helping with vaccinations, but also putting on entertainment for the kids there because he had experience as a clown and could ride a unicycle, all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, he was ambushed by the Contras, and he was killed with two other Nicaraguans as well, and the Contras were financed by the USA. So this was obviously very controversial, and over in the USA, Congress decided that it was to be banned in terms of helping the Contras with their plight over there. But once it had been decided, members of the Reagan administration continued to finance the Contra rebels covertly. So within that administration, they obviously wanted that conflict over there to go a particular way. Obviously, it's very controversial. That all culminated in the Iran-Contra affair. But like I said, I don't want to get into too much history. But in terms of this song and the depth of the writing, you can really start to appreciate the issues that Sting is bringing up here and the point that he is making with this particular composition. When you're looking at a performance like this that is put together so seamlessly, you can start to appreciate the musicality, the talent levels, just the artistry that's on show. But then also when you look deeper, you can see the inspiration for Sting writing this in the first place and get into those reasons and dissect the song as a message. And that is what you can do with all the great songwriters. They have great melody, they have great composing within their tracks. They've got great ability as an arranger for that song to get an orchestra together, to get everything you want to hear musically, but then there's always that underlying current, that deeper meaning within a song that you will find. If you just scratch beneath the surface, there is so much more in there. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!